right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in the Art Gives Us Hope Festival. Day number 2. Carl Evans, of course, founder and CEO of Hope for Us Network. And as most of you know, this is a pre-record, even though the chat is live, and we hope you're joining us in Discord as well. We have another special artist feature with us this afternoon, and it's going to be my honor to introduce this wonderful person in a minute. But just in case, if you are just joining us right now, remember that you can always check our clips and pre-records down in the channel information. You can also follow us and the entire schedule at aguh.org, artgivesushope.org. You'll see that content flowing through the chat as well. So today we have another incredible visual artist with us, Allison Poplett, by way of Chicago. And we're going to be talking with Allison about her creative endeavors. And again, you'll be able to see if we bring up mentions about Allison has a great store. Allison has a lot of great available works. All that information you're going to see coming up in chat and we'll also be posting it, and you can check it out at the website. But let's just jump right into it. Allison, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm very excited about it. So thank you.
Well, we were really hyped to have you on. Your work is phenomenal. And for full disclosure, I've had the pleasure of knowing Allison in the Chicago artist scene for quite a while. And when we were putting this festival together, she was one of the first people we thought to invite. And I think for folks at home engaging who may not be familiar with this, Allison, why don't you give us a little bit of the origin story, where you're from, where'd you grow up, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I was born in California, but we moved to the Chicago area when I was pretty young. But I love California. I'm a California girl at heart. So I grew up here in River Forest and went to Oak Park High School. Ended up going to Bradley University for college. And after that, Chicago Portfolio School for graphic design. So I always had an interest in art since I was little. That was just something I really liked doing. I think especially being like an only child, you develop ways to occupy yourself for sure. So that was mine. Drawing was mine. So yeah, I studied drawing. I minored in art history. And then I had that post college, what am I doing with my life? How do I make a career out of art? So I ended up going back to school for design. I actually had a semi-corporate design job afterward. I worked at Third Man Records, Jack White's Nashville record label, for 2 years, designing all sorts of things for the store, things for various artists, show posters, album covers, merchandise to sell in the store, web graphics. We even designed like billboards, just everything. And that was a really amazing first design job to have. But I really enjoyed working in design at Third Man, but ultimately felt like working independently was something I wanted to do after a little bit of soul searching. And I always had a passion in illustration specifically. So I ended up going that route. And ever since, it's been a great choice. I love working for myself. I love working independently. And I still do design work as well. I do logo design, book covers, promo posters, websites. So I still do love design and incorporate a lot of design elements into my work now. I'm really inspired by poster design and book cover design. So I haven't completely abandoned that route. But at the moment, illustration is mainly what I'm doing. So yeah, that's the background.
That's cool. And sort of following up on some of that. So you talk about Third Man Records, and it's sort of, it's like, oh, no big deal. But you said that was your first sort of gig in that world, like maybe not first job ever, but like, was it just sort of first world where it was your job was to be on that creative side?
Exactly. That was my first job, being paid to be a creative. I mean, it started out, I was an intern and then eventually got hired there. But Yeah, that was kind of wild and not expected. I expected to be in Nashville for the length of the internship, which was 3 months, and then it ended up being 6 months, and then I ended up staying there for a couple of years. So it was really a dream job, an amazing opportunity, and a great way to see how things were operated in a really unusual way, because I was told so many times working there that this is not how people normally do things. It's very DIY, which is a Jack White thing for sure, doing everything yourself, which I think is awesome and was a great way to learn. Like if we had a show, we'd have to make and print and cut all the tickets ourselves. Like we didn't have someone else doing it
Oh,
for us. So a show at Third Man,
yeah.
not like a show somewhere else. So it was a really cool hands-on experience, and having such a small team of people. I think it was like 30 or less people all working together was really cool. And it was kind of semi-informal in that way, which made it made it like nice and a little more relaxed, especially for a first type of art job that I ever had. So yeah, I loved it. It was a great opportunity. It was totally a dream job.
And you know what's interesting about that, beyond the fact that, oh, it's rock star, it's this cool, you must be going into this cool environment, because for those who wouldn't be familiar, and not trying to insult any of our viewers' attention, if Jack White, if that doesn't ring a bell, was formerly of the White Stripes, also solo artist, also the Rocketeurs. Think has a number of other wild projects, but Jack White founded his own label called Third Man Records, based out of Nashville. Has its own performance space as well in the building, and it's as Allison has clearly articulated, it runs its own operation. It's not some sort of random corporate outfit in a big skyscraper. It's very much a sort of community group. So, you're there and you're in that environment, and that sort of brings me to an interesting thought I'm having here about, especially for art and any media, any genre, it's always hard to take your first steps out and build confidence and things like that. So here you have a place that's, it's no joke. They're clearly doing things that they're there to make money, but it's also, this is a group that has success, this organization. And it could have been anything. Could have been a for-profit corporation, et cetera, like a food company, jeans, whatever. What does it do for you that you have an organization where you're going to put your name and your design to things, and they're going to put their reputation behind your creations, that they had enough faith in you? What's to get that early on? What is that sort of for your creative spirit? How did that work? Was it kind of something like, holy crap, or was it like you didn't realize it till after you left, or you know what I mean? How does that? What was your thought process of that?
I think
Excuse me.
it was kind of a combination of the two, I would say, especially starting out as on an intern level, which took a lot of the pressure off, because a lot of people got hired part-time or even as a full-time designer, or even art director. And an art director oversees all the designers and has a lot more to do, project manages, assigns work, etc. So I think it was good to start gradually that way. Being an intern, I got to do a lot of fun projects. They weren't I wasn't just getting coffee. Like I got to make the show posters still. I got to, help out with some artwork. And then once I was hired, I was able to actually, have more creative input. And that was nice too, because our art director was very, like, he worked with our strengths. So he knew that I was more illustrative. So if there's a project that illustration would be used in, he would go, "Oh, Allison, do you want this project?" Or even if we were a fan of the particular artist. So he knew, for example, one of my coworkers really liked the band Sleep. We did a lot of work with Sleep. He'd be like, "Oh, you do that work," So that was really nice, because I think it makes the work better, because you're clearly passionate about it, you're excited
Sure.
about it, and you're going to have more ideas too, because you're familiar with the artists themselves. So So yeah, it was definitely a combination. And there are a lot of like, I don't know if I want to curse, but there are a lot of like holy crap moments. There are a
Nah,
lot of holy crap moments for sure. Yeah, like I said at first, I just thought I was gonna be there as an intern making. I didn't know what scale it'd be making art at, and as I progressed, it was like, whoa, this is very cool. So I felt really grateful and really lucky that was my first gig because I really didn't want to work in a very corporate setting. I wasn't interested in an ad agency, which is what mainly my school, portfolio school, had geared students towards. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't for me. So I felt really lucky to be a part of something that I was really excited about. I love music. I've always been a huge music fan. I love rock music. I love indie. A lot of the bands that were on the label were ones like my favorites, like the Dead Weather. Allison Mossart is amazing. The Kills is one of my favorite bands. So yeah, I think one of my first CDs was a White Stripes CD. So it was really, really like, what? This is crazy. So I felt really lucky and I did not take it for granted, not once. So yeah, it was great.
I love that. And so you talk about you kind of knew you didn't want to do corporate art of the way. So I'm kind of jumping all over the place here a little bit, but let's talk a little bit. You went to Bradley, you went to school directly knowing you were gonna go into to these worlds. Let's talk a little bit about like the origins of your this sort of creative endeavors. What can pre going into college for it, making that commitment? What were sort of how did you know this was the right, maybe just start with like what was the first moment you decided like, yeah, this is I want to do this. I want to try and make this a thing. Was it making doodling when you were 8 years old? Was it something that maybe was specific? What was the like getting into the formal side of it? What was your sort of influences going into it?
Yeah, I think it started in middle school. I I always excelled in art and I always really enjoyed it. And I think my dad like got me like a little like a bamboo tablet, like one of those tablets you hook up to your computer. And then I got into drawing like digitally. I had like Adobe Photoshop Elements. It's not like full Photoshop, but it's like partial.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun drawing digitally. I never had done that before. And just like having an undo button was so amazing and life changing.
Okay.
So I I always liked drawing, but I feel like yeah, around middle school I got more in depth with it and focused on it and noticed that I was actually good at it and enjoyed it and was recognized by some teachers as having some skill and ability. So that was like, oh, this is something I'm good at. And then in high school too, I always just excelled in art. It was something I really enjoyed, and I really got into like fashion illustration in high school. I remember when there was like a whole like blog when bloggers came out, like Tavi Gevinson and um, she did like Style Rookie. She's a
Oh yeah.
fantastic writer. Yeah, she went to my high school and she's amazing. Um, but yeah, I really got into that. Garance Duray, I'm probably totally butchering her name, but she's a French artist, and she was one of my first like, oh my god, you can make a job out of this. She's a fashion
Okay.
illustrator, and she's amazing. She's since created like a whole lifestyle brand and everything, but she started as a fashion illustrator and had the same kind of realization as me, like, oh, I can do this for a job. This is so cool. I didn't know that. So yeah, in college, I did a lot of like a ton of portraiture. That was my thing, was portraits all the time. And same with fashion illustration, like drawing like women posing, different um, practicing like different clothing textures, because that's a big part of fashion illustration, is being able to accurately depict like what the fabric is. So if a designer had an idea and needed illustrated, it would be like a leather jacket, sequins. You have to learn how to draw that. I took a fashion illustration course over the summer at the Art Institute, and that was super helpful in learning how to do that. So yeah, I studied drawing because I thought, that was, my school did not have an illustration program. So that was the closest I could get to that. I was briefly in art education because I wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted to teach at a professor level. I didn't realize that art education's for elementary, whatnot. So quickly switched out of that. But I initially was studying graphic design. So I changed my major like 800 times. So I was just going back and forth in different art things. But I started in graphic design thinking, well, this is the only way you can make a career out of art. And, upon doing more research and having that inspiration from Grand Story, I was like, oh, I think illustration is really the way to go. So I was kind of going back and forth because I thought, oh, well, how do you make a career out of illustration? Graphic design seems a lot more applicable in the real world. Now I don't think that way anymore. I think you should go for what, lights you up and what you really want to do. So
So
not like I
let's,
want to do design, but
and that's interesting too, to note that, we're hearing a lot of oscillations and in your process of where you've come from and where you're going. And it seems like you were doing a lot of that. Well, let me not editorialize it. Would you say these changes, was it a matter of just you're in your head and you're identifying, I like this, I don't like that? Or what was the process for discovering what you didn't like? And
that's
just
a good question.
yeah, and then inversely, we'll talk about what you do like, but sort of how did that process work for like less this, more this?
That's a great question. I mean, just experience. I think like you can only think so much, and at the end of the day, experience is what will teach you. And then listening to my gut, like I think listening to your gut is never going to lead you astray. And
Was that easy, or did you have to learn to do that? Excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you in there.
no, it's a good question. Both. I think a lot of the time it's been easy, and I usually know to listen to my gut. And then, especially when you're really young, you just ignore it, But I think you can retrain yourself, like to listen to it again. So, it also depends on the situation too. But for me in general, it's usually not super hard to do. So yeah, I think in design, when I was taking design courses, a lot of the teachers emphasize that you're a problem solver. It's a lot of problem solving. You're solving a problem for someone else. And I was a little turned off by that mentality. I agree with it, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think I just wanted to make things look nice, and I didn't necessarily want to be solving problems. Also, which I don't think is always applicable because there isn't always a problem per se.
Okay.
But yeah, it was really just experience over time. Like I'm so glad I had that internship and that job at Third Man, but it did show me what I wanted and what I didn't want. For sure, I loved when I got to do some illustration work. I loved poster design. I love photoshopping, weirdly. If I could Photoshop something into something else, I was like, oh yeah. So it's just experience at the end of the day, I would say.
Well, so and that brings me to you mentioned you're in a space now where you talk about things that light you up. So let's talk about that a little more. What lights you up? Like, what are the things that really call to you?
Yeah. Well, illustration does, and I'm very inspired by nature and folk art, Scandinavian art, color, nature. Those things just I like my art. I like to make people feel calm and happy, take them to a calm, happy place, and that makes me very excited. In design work, I get really excited when for a project or illustration work, if I have a poster design for a really fun event, that will light me up. A book cover, even a logo, that can be very exciting too. Just the idea of taking someone's vision and then bringing it to life and seeing how happy it makes them, that really lights me up and makes me happy. And just when people, when my art can resonate with people in a nice way. Like, for example, I just had a craft show and someone said that a piece reminded her of a piece that her mom had in the bathroom growing up. And I was like, that's so cool. Like that really warmed my heart. So, and that is what really inspired me too. I didn't realize this until recently, but my mom had a ton of cool art around all the time, and she loves nature and she loves flowers. And I think subconsciously it just seeped into my art, and I didn't even realize that it did. And then I look back and I was like, oh my God, I keep using my mom's favorite color. I keep drawing flowers. Like, I didn't even realize it until recently. But yeah, what lights me up is just the feeling of creating art is just it's just a very calming feeling too. So, but making other people happy is like the best thing ever. I think I read somewhere that people who are really happy with their job know how it makes others feel, and that it benefits others in some way. That's what I meant. How it benefits others. And yeah, I always enjoyed what I did, but once you add that human connection element, it's like a 10,000 times better. So,
That's so cool. And I love hearing about that. I think because especially if you're, for those watching right now and those who may engage the content after the festival weekend, we get a lot of individuals connecting with the network who are from the creative space, the artistic space, and we hear a lot about things like finding confidence in the creative flow and finding like people's directions. Like each individual artist will have their own sort of struggle or challenge navigating that, young, older. So I think it's great to hear not every, like, finding the confidence. Like, you exude a great confidence about finding your path, not necessarily that you necessarily had it all figured out from day one. And I kind of want to drill in a little bit more on something you talked about with creating work that provides calming. Can calm. What sort of well, what is not what does that mean, but what are the sort of things you find achieve that? What are some things that you feel go in that direction?
I think the art that I made that goes in that direct. Well, I think color choice definitely for sure. I made a yellow flowers painting that I just like to use very like kind of calming colors. My favorite color is like kind of indigo blue, so like a purplish blue. I find nature extremely calming and plants, so that's why a lot of my work has a lot of plants. I just made a print called Cozy Room, and I just went for like the dreamiest, coziest room I could think of. So it's nice being transported to that type of place, especially with their cold Chicago winters. Like all I want to do is be cozy right now.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I think color achieves that, and imagery, of course. I'm really inspired by like Matisse. I feel like a lot of his work was very like he could depict a very cozy, calming situation. So
Okay.
yeah,
And I ask because I think you don't have to. Not everything has to have labels or anything like that. But and as we're talking right now, we're showcasing some of your works that are available on your website and things like that. And I think it's really clear. Lots of very, very vibrant things. And the animals and flowers, and plant life is very crystal clear. And I'm certainly familiar with your work. So I wonder about, as you sort of found your pathway here, you mentioned you're at an art gallery. What are the sort of, and you've talked about a lot of different intersections, and what's your sort of ideal application of your work? If not, I don't want to pigeonhole you and say you're only doing one thing. It's cool to be diverse, but what are what are things that sort of feel like paths you're on right now? What do you kind of see for yourself currently and sort of moving forward or even if it's just things you want to get into that you have yet to really crack open, like places to take your art and the work you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, I have been doing a lot of craft fairs, so I've been preparing for those. So I sell a lot of art prints. I've been dabbling in painting more lately. I normally create my work digitally. I use Procreate, and painting is very new for me. I've always been someone who drew and did not paint. I thought I didn't like it, but your mind can change. So my mind did. And it's been a lot of fun. Experimenting with new mediums is super fun. I want to try ceramics. I want to
Mm.
try painting them as well. So that's where my head is at. I love like hand molded ceramics. Like I like when it's thrown on a wheel, but I think it looks really cool when you make it by hand, like
So
just like
it's
a kid.
yeah. So ceramics, you're talking like pottery or like that ghost stuff, like okay. And
Yeah,
also, okay,
yeah.
because I mean,
Yeah, like I would throw something on a wheel, but I think it's really fun just to like mash it together.
okay.
Yeah, I think one thing that's kind of like separated me from the design thing, I feel like a lot design requires like a lot of, and I don't really want to use this word, I'm trying to think of a better one. Not perfectionism, but it's a very detail oriented job.
Preciseness.
Yeah,
Okay.
preciseness and just getting so many things right and aligned properly, and then you prepare it to be printed properly, which I like those things. There's a lot of things like that that I think I excel at, but I think it's nice having that balance, that yin yang, because with my illustration I can be imperfect and loosey goosey, which is really fun for me. So yeah, that's related to the ceramics thing. It's just fun to be like have a little more play with it. So yeah, that's what I see. I want to just keep expanding and doing more craft shows. Like you said, I have my online shop. I love to do more commission work. I've done a lot of design work for people, like making logos and posters and whatnot. But I would love to do like a commissioned painting or a
Mm.
drawing, or I just started recently offering pet portraits on my website. So I'm really excited about doing that because I love dogs, and I will draw your cat too, but I love dogs. So
And if you're
yeah.
obviously you're watching right now or after the festival weekend, you're seeing the images of Allison's work right now, and um, you know that's that's something that seems like common sense thing to people, but they don't think about it until it's right in front of them. But pet portraits, look, your cell phone's there and you're taking lots of pictures, but man, you get yourself a portrait, and that's very, very that's some specialness. I like and these interviews and things will always go wherever they're going to go. So forgive me, but I'm noticing here, and I'm interested in the fact that you're talking about art that's in the preciseness, and now you're talking moving into pottery, as it were, crafts and painting. Because when I think painting, we're talking whether that's like watercolor or oil or what have you, painting, right. So I think it's interesting that you're you're you've got the preciseness here, and now you're moving into the sort of like the potential anarchy and like looser space of these other looser spaces. Do you think, and I've been familiar enough with different artist process. I'm not going to call myself an artist, but some people start in like loose areas and they feel like their evolution is going into precision. Um, you have been an accomplished person. I don't know if you want to, beat your own drum or toot your own horn, but I'll do it for you. And that you have created a great body of work. So I'm wondering, do you see going into these other things? Yes, it's calling to you, but do you think like a younger you or an earlier you would have went into these looser things, or do you see going into these more where it really can rely on the fluidity of your vision? Do you see that as kind of an evolution of your skill sets?
That's a really good question. Oh man, I don't know. I think I think younger me would not have seen any of this really. Um I don't I didn't really get an inkling of what I wanted to do illustration wise until I was working at Third Man. And mainly through Instagram, I saw a lot of artists that really inspired me. Like Agatha Singer is one of them. She's an amazing French artist who uses color in like the coolest way and has lots of nature inspiration. So I kind of started with her, but a good way to find inspiration for me was finding an artist I admired, like a modern one, and then seeing who they took inspiration from. So then you just go back and back and back and back, and it definitely helps you create like more original work, and it's very interesting too. So yeah, I didn't really see myself getting into this. I think what I've tried to do, I had like a therapist say a really wise thing to me, and she was like, our job is just to like follow your breadcrumb of joy, which I really liked.
Um,
So that's kind of where I'm at in my art career, and I just try to do what is fun. I think I feel really lucky and really blessed that I can do this, and I can do things that are fun to me. um I've had to work a lot of jobs, a lot of 6-day weeks and things like that. But I feel really lucky to be where I'm at. It's taken a long time. But yeah, I don't think I really anticipated being here. But I think when you look back, like hindsight's 2020, and you look back and everything makes sense that it led you up until this point, because my design background has been so helpful in my current career, designing my website, my business cards, invoices. There's so much design that goes into what I'm doing now because you're essentially branding yourself. So yeah, I didn't really I always really liked art, but then, looking around my mom's house and all the art she has, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, this all makes sense now. Basically inspired by everything she had hanging up. So
and that's a natural thing that we absorb our earliest influences. Um, but I really noticed something it's interesting here because so especially around the network um audience, folks who connect with us, especially from the creative side. Um, Lots of folks sometimes they're interested, especially the younger members of our audience, teens, tweens, adolescents. They're not sure where to begin with art, or they're not sure that they love it. They know they have a passion for it, and I think you keep circling back to and underscoring this thing here that you tried this, you tried that, you explored this, you explored that, and it can be so scary, especially for younger artists. There's a social emotional context to it. Maybe it's an anxiety thing, maybe it's a fear judgment thing where people are afraid to sort of put themselves out there or to try things, etc. Um, and it seems like you've been able to try different things, and that trying and the exploring through it is what's really opened these different doors for you in terms of finding things that you really like to do, et cetera, et cetera. What's been Is there anything that comes to mind in terms of that's helped you sort of take that step forward to go to Bradley, to apply for an internship, to if somebody offers you the job, say, yeah, I'll take the job, and now starting your own business. What have been things that sort of helped you take those steps to try and push forward?
Oh, I love that question. That's a really good question. A bunch of things. I Starting out and going to school for graphic design was like my safe route. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to Bradley, I'm gonna study design. Then when I kind of lost interest, I think first reading about Garance Duray and the fact that she started an illustration career, I was like, just knowing that was possible. That was the first time I think I knew of like an illustrator having a job. Then just support from my friends and family. They always, everything I did, they always supported me, and I'm really lucky and I'm really thankful for that. And that definitely propelled me forward. I think they would have been honest with me if they were like, Allison, there's no future for you. So they were very kind. But I think they had a lot of faith in me, which was really nice. And um, I, therapy was a huge one. I had the best therapist in the world, and I still am in touch with her today. She's actually a business coach and gives amazing insight. But she actually encouraged me to take the internship, and I remember not knowing if I should do it. I had to move all the way to Nashville from Chicago. I didn't know anyone there. I was kind of terrified, but I also had a desire to live out of state. So it was kind of a perfect marriage of things. It was an adventure living out of state, and it also was furthering my career, which was something I really wanted and felt really ready for. So yeah, it was two perfect things. So yeah, it was definitely a combination of things. And not to say it's really scary. And I think you just have to remember that whatever like desires you have, they're for a reason, you know? And I think that everyone in an ideal world, it'd be so nice if everyone could, be doing what lights them up or what makes them happy. And I think it's really worth going for it, because I think it's a lot more scary to me to have a job that I wasn't happy with for years on end versus going for something and having it work out, even if it is really scary. Because, I mean, worst case scenario, I used to work at Trader Joe's. I can go back to Trader Joe's any day I want. So, like, there's always, it's, there's something there. There is a safety net, and even feeling like you have a safety net, because that's scary too. So I'm not saying it's not scary. It definitely is. But
And it seems like with that mentality, because I think that's important for people to hear. You bring up and I want to underscore this, is that you take a shot, you take a chance, you take a risk. And you said, well, I'll go back to Trader Joe's. If go back, insert company or a job, 9 to 5, something, what have you. And you didn't frame that as that's failure. That sometimes, and I think that this is especially for, you listening, watching right now or in later times, it's important that if you've been listening to what Alice is talking about, taking chances on yourself and your passions, following, because I'm keeping a track of great quotes this weekend, and following your breadcrumbs of joy, Allison by way of therapist. Taking a chance on yourself, even if it doesn't manifest into glory, glamour, glitz, and everything else, isn't a failure. You may try something and it doesn't go the way you want, and so you've got to reset, start over, but that's not failure. And I think we see a lot of times that people can become hindered because maybe it's just you want to see the sure thing, or maybe it's an internal sense of anxieties or self-doubts. But failure is not having something happen. You're not a failure. You tried something and realized you got to go back, and in this case, you didn't get to make a living doing X at that point, and so you got to go back to what might be a job you weren't that thrilled with. That's not failure. You tried. You're going to find a different way. For you, one of the things that you brought up inside of that is the adventure idea. When you're looking at going into the freelancing world that you are now, you are departing from maybe looking for a job in corporate graphics and marketing, the ad world. Was that, what's helped you sort of, and maybe you might think of yourself as still early in the freelance hustle, as it were, but like, what are things that sort of keep you on an even keel and keep you motivated? Because now you're in a place where it's not you've got to worry about a boss. Now you're the boss. So like when you wake up in the morning, if there's a project to do or whatever, you're the one who's got to hustle it down. What's the things that sort of like help you stay on the track you've set for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to real quick, add on to what you just said, because I think that was really great. It's not a failure if it doesn't work out. Because my career was so anything but linear. It was like all over the place. So I just want to clarify that, I didn't go from success to success. It was like a very bumpy road. So I, after Third Man, I was working at churches while I was working there, and I worked there for a long time. And there's also nothing wrong with working there. It's an awesome place to work, but worked there for some time before going into illustration. So that was when I was kind of figuring things out. So yeah, I took a big leap moving to Nashville, doing design. It wasn't for me. And then I just had a huge break in between. So that's just life. But anyway, to answer your question, to keep motivated, that's a really good question, because that's been a new journey for me for sure. I think it's like, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging anyway, but I think I'm naturally like I don't really like procrastinating. I like getting things done. So there's some parts of your personality that might just help out in that type of endeavor, like naturally. But yeah, what keeps me motivated? I'm excited to do the work that I'm doing. It's exciting for me. It makes me happy. I'm always trying to think of ways to make it even more fun and more enjoyable. So that is like a creative exercise in itself, just thinking of how can I make this like even better on a day-to-day basis. So trying new things is always really fun for me. Trying new, like I said, experimenting with new mediums. I just started doing craft shows, so that's super fun. So yeah, there's keeping myself motivated, I think it's also knowing that I can letting myself take a break, because I think that's really hard to do, and I struggle with that, is making myself stop or thinking, I don't have to make art every day. I don't Some people, I'm sure it's possible, but I just don't operate that way. Sometimes I'll take really long breaks and I won't make anything for a while, but that's really beneficial for me, because then I'll take a break and suddenly have all these fresh new ideas, and it's really beneficial. But I think we live in like a really go, go, go mentality society. And for me, that doesn't really apply to creativity. I think it makes it more difficult. So knowing when that is necessary and knowing when it isn't. Fortunately, I like that this new career has a business side to things. So there's a lot of, there's like paperwork and there's marketing and things like that. So it's kind of nice if I'm not being creative to just feel like, okay, I'm doing something when I'm, working on the business aspect of things. So it's less pressure to be creative all the time, because for me, I just can't do that. It's kind of a struggle. But
Was there,
yeah.
and I have to ask, was that a process, the learning to pump the brakes, let's say learning to walk away from the creative grind, was that something you had to learn? It sounds like the way you're saying it seems like so would you like drive yourself into the dust and get into the misery of like it's just not happening today, but you like,
Oh yeah.
and was that, and this is sort of me speaking from the I write and everything like that, but just seeing in creative communities, did that sort of attach to like a sense of self-identity, self-worth kind of thing too? Like when you were kind of running on empty, but you still tried to like walk me through what it took for you to embrace this, I can put it down for a second mentality.
Oh yeah, everything you said. Yes. But but I have not perfected this at all. I still have times where I'm like, come on, Allison, you gotta keep making stuff. And it's just practice. I'm still practicing it every day, all the time. I think it's something I learned like by literally having to, like getting to a point where I just wasn't enjoying it. I was making myself do it. Felt really forced as opposed to something I wanted to do. So, and then I just took a huge break and I was like, this isn't interesting. This isn't fun right now. So just taking a break, which I was fortunate to be able to do. But yeah, that was just a time and experience thing. And I try to read a lot of, books written by creatives, listen to podcasts. Um, like I said, I have, my business coach slash former therapist who has shared so many insights. She's a fellow business owner as well. And that's been extremely helpful. I think I wouldn't have known about pumping the brakes if it wasn't for her. And just checking in with yourself too. I try to journal and that helps a lot, but just noticing that this is losing its spark.
Yeah, and that's it's cool because even that kind of has a bit of a full circle feature to it. When early on today you were talking about following your gut, and that feature, being able to set something aside, is also a gut check. And I think the Hope for Us Network is an organization. When we talk about proactive prevention and mental health, folks, and if you've been watching the festival throughout the weekend, we've talked about, well, why do we celebrate self-expression? Well, our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, of course. You've heard me say, if you've been watching with the festival all weekend, that we're communicating our mental health, and our mental health is our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And the most powerful form of communication is our self-expression. And laughing and crying is part of communicating our mental health, as much as talking, as much as dancing, singing, painting. And one of the most powerful tools is to embrace all facets of self-expression without stigma. And we can zero it right back in here. If you've been listening to Allison's great insights, you may not necessarily be able to appreciate it, but think about, especially if you consider yourself a creative at home or wherever you're engaging this content, that when you think of being creative, whatever it is, whether it's from pen or brush or sculpting tool or photography lens, your voice by a microphone, we can attach an identity to that, a sense of self-worth to it also, even if we're not producing things that we want to sell or put out to the public. But the problem is, it's a double-edged sword. We can feel a great, immense sense of joy, but in creating those productions and that engine, if things start to run dry or low, it can be that much easier to kick our own asses about our sense of self-worth. And listening to your gut is not an easy task to do. There's too much in our society that makes us question and doubt ourselves. And if you've been listening to the great things that Allison's been sharing, it's not about it's all magical and you just figure it out. But trusting in yourself, you have the right to do. And you have the right to validate your own ideas and inspirations without asking for permission or getting approval from your friends or anyone else around you. And I'm kind of hammering in on this one part because our creative energies are sacred. To take from your own ideas in your own hand and produce is such a wonderful and intimately powerful part of who you can be. And nurturing that isn't always just spending 10 hours a day grinding out a picture, because there's a lot of the whole hustle culture and crap like that makes us, or could potentially make you ground yourself into the dust. And learning to stop and smell the roses can be, and oftentimes should be, a central part of who we are. And there's too much, especially in Western culture, American culture, take your pick, late stage capitalism, whatever you want to insert there, that's telling us not to slow down. So Allison, I can't thank you enough for sharing these insights. It's one thing for me to talk about it, but for someone to see someone like you who's in the shit in real time as well, and doing the work. And when people look at your store, for instance, and I want everyone to understand, that's not something where you bang that out all in 1 week. The works that you produce now are the culmination of all the evolutions and developments that you've went through as a human being and an artist, right? So that's a lot there. But talking about where you are right this moment, and you're doing the freelance work, and we clearly see it, what are kind of things you sort of look forward to? And this doesn't necessarily mean things you're going to produce, but sort of as you look forward, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and we're not post, but what are things you sort of look forward to for yourself creatively and whatnot moving forward, just down the road, regardless of the calendar year? I don't want to do what's in it for 2022. I don't jinx ourselves. So just what's in your mind or heart,
Right.
if we can ask, what's in your mind or heart sort of currently right now, and as you sort of look down the horizon for yourself?
Well, I am hoping to sell some of my work wholesale. I can't talk about it too much, but I might be doing something like that along the line. So that is a goal of mine. I would love to see my work in different stores. Um, that's a really good question. Like I said before, I would love to do more custom work and custom illustration for sure, and experiment with different mediums. I recently have kind of had the inkling of having my own storefront, but I don't know for sure if that's something I would do. I'm kind of figuring it out as I go along. But I I think that could be a lot of fun, selling my work in a storefront, maybe other people's work too. But um yeah, that's where I'm at future wise with my career. I'm also just kind of open to everything. I love trying new things and saying yes to a lot of things. It's really fun for me because you never know where it's going to take you or where you might go with it, or if you might really enjoy it, or like you said before, you might go, oh, this is so not for me. Or doing kind of an artist collaboration or like a brand collaboration. I've
Sure.
never done anything like that before. So I would totally love to design a print for maybe a fashion company or even stationery. Um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at for the future.
Oh, I dig. So,
Yeah.
as we're sort of winding down here, um, I think, and you can, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Just we can try and be polite about it. But we have a really diverse audience, and we're not asking you as if you're the know all, end all, Gandalf, uh, have to be the arbiter of all things art. But from where you are right now, as you're still growing, rocking, and rolling superstar, what are some, maybe what's a little nugget you might encourage? Let's say I'm going to give you two different population groups. One, someone who is somewhere in the realm of thinking about pursuing the academics of creativity. Maybe they're in high school, maybe they're junior high, and they're kind of doubting or wondering what might be like an elevator insight for them. Not really sure, go do it, but like someone who's doubting themselves, what might be something you might say to them? You saw them on the street one day.
That's a great question. I think one good thing is to question your thoughts. Like, don't take every thought you have face value. Like, have an argument with yourself in your head. Like, if there's a voice saying, you're not good at this, you shouldn't do it, or you won't succeed, just ask yourself, like, without a shadow of a doubt, am I sure that I won't succeed? Without a shadow of a doubt. Because there's only like there's not many guarantees in life. Like, there's basically none. So that is what I would say. And I would also say you don't have to worry about you shouldn't have to worry about where something's going to go. Like I said, following your breadcrumb of joy, just following the things that make you happy, I think they can lead to some really amazing things, and things that you couldn't even fathom or think or dream about, and could be even better than what you're dreaming about. So, and you also don't have to monetize what you do. You don't have to make a career out of it. That takes a big load of pressure off. If I quit this at some point, I wouldn't beat myself up about it. If it lost interest to me, it would be okay, because I'd rather live my life being happy than making myself do something. I think there's a big like no quitting mentality in our society, at least Western society. Like, being a quitter is the worst thing you can do. I've quit so many things.
Yeah.
So, but it's a learning thing because I would stay with something that I did not enjoy, but I just kept making myself do it because I thought being a quitter was like the worst thing you could do. So I really don't know a lot. I'm learning as I go. But that's, I think, what I would say to like past me. You know, if I was like in a time machine and I ran into younger me who felt really doubtful. And I still feel doubtful too. I think another thing too is to remember that doubtful thoughts may not go away. And that's okay. Because sometimes it can just be your brain chatter. It can be an old habit of self-doubt. Self-doubt can be a habit. So it's okay. Question your thoughts.
My dude, you dropping bangers as we close
Oh,
out.
thanks.
That's that gold. No, check it. And I hope everyone's listening. I mean, y'all are listening, but you might have to go back and rewind a little bit. But like, so first, let's circle. I don't want to editorialize. You said have an argument with yourself, and I just want to put the edit on. Having an argument with your negative thoughts. If I may, is that all right? If I can like be prescriptive.
Yeah.
Okay. So having an argument with yourself, especially with the negative thoughts, push back. Beautiful. When you're following the breadcrumbs of joy, which that could make a freaking, I don't know, that feels like a card or an Instagram caption post on a mountain. You don't know where it's going to go, but you go because maybe that breadcrumbs is going to take you around a corner that you just can't see right now, but you can trust it. I love that.
Yeah.
Then some real bangerangs. I mean, this is all bangerang, but like, you don't have to monetize things. Holy shit. I think especially for the youths as we're coming up, that seems to be like, you look at the way that social media technologies have given accessibility to stuff, it almost kind of pollutes and makes people believe they've got to take their interest in monetizing. Like it used to be there were only a few things, writing a book or oil painting or writing a movie making. But now because you can make money playing cards, like like Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, live streaming, I think people could get lost that they monetize. So that's freaking some Stephen Hawkins level. That's Allison Poplett genius shit right there. You don't have to monetize things. It's okay to lose interest. It's okay to lose interest. That's what Allison said. Y'all write that down. It's going to go on our board. You'll see throughout the festival, but it's okay to lose interest. With the side quote, I quit so many things. But gosh darn it, I mean, you hit it right on the head. You had been educated or conditioned so much to not quit. And I gotta feel that that's not the only person in the universe, especially in our modern world, who, whether it's coming from parents or something we just sort of put into our own heads, like we're not supposed to quit. And quit, can mean a lot of different ways of quitting, but stopping something you don't want to do, I think we can see like the drop down menu. It's like a cartoon where the drop down menu just goes on for miles. Like having the confidence, the comfort, or the will, or the agency to stop doing something you no longer want to do. We can go to dark places with that, but even just in the more innocence of your creative passions, shit, man, that's great stuff, Allison. And then,
Oh, thanks.
I really don't know a lot. Gosh darn it, it's all right to do that. We don't. There's an obsession with having to be like an expert know-it-all and everything, and I think that can screw people up. Still feel doubt, and it may not go away. So that's important too. There's no like, there may not be, and I'll undersign and second that motion that you may get to a place of being good at doing something, and even if there's still self-doubt, that doesn't mean that you aren't where you're supposed to be. Like, there's no level of competence, of ability, that may eviscerate a question of lingering doubt, but you can still keep going with what you're doing. Allison, you are wise. very wise. And, like I had mentioned at the top of this, I've known you for some time and seen your creative works. But I'm so glad that you can make time for us, because I think people can only benefit from your great insight as you continue to learn in real time and grow and kick ass as an artist. People can only benefit from following you, checking out your stuff, and I hope you continue to feel comfortable sharing your insights and your amazingness. Um, little closing words, any thoughts? I mean, you dropped some great gold mines already, but as you're sort of just gonna wind down tonight, was there any, I've got one fluffy question to ask you too. Which, let me just ask you this question before we get into the closing words, which is, you're putting on your shoes, okay? Are you sock, shoe, shoe, or sock, shoe, shoe?
Oh, I didn't know there was a different way. Sock, shoe, shoe.
Okay, all right.
Oh, what are you?
You know what? It depends on the day and the mood. So if I'm in a rush, I go sock, shoe, shoe. But sometimes I want to go like really slow, and I have like a thing about making sure I make the perfect knot on my shoes. So I'll go sock, careful tie shoe, sock, carefully tie shoe, like I'm putting on like a uniform.
You just blew my mind. I had no idea there was another way. Wow.
So thank you for sharing that deep, intimate detail with us.
Yes.
And yeah, do you have any sort of closing thoughts, or you got any shows coming up we can hype for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me be a part of this. This was awesome. You're awesome, Carl. This was fun. I'm so excited for all the things that you guys are doing at the network. It's so cool. It's so fun. And I'm just so grateful to be here. So thank you. And yeah, this weekend, if you're in Chicago, I'll be at Renegade Craft Fair at Fulton Market, 11 to 5. That is the only fair I have coming up. But yeah, if you want to check out my work, it's at apoplett.com. All my social handles are just my name, at Allison Poplett. So thank you so much for letting me be here, and this was so fun. This is awesome. Love it.
Well, it's our absolute pleasure. And again, everyone, if you're checking in with us in real time, or you're engaging this content later, or even checking out the podcast version, all of Allison's links and info is going to be down below. Check it out. We've got it pumping throughout the thread. And don't forget, aside from her great existing works, commissions, holla, holla, holla. If you got a pet that you want to immortalize, holla. You see her great hand already. So, Allison Poplett, thank you so much for making time for
Carl.
us. You kick ass, and we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Keep rocking on.
Thank you. You too.